At 5:30 on December 22, 1944, Oberst Heinz Kokott crouched in a frozen foxhole just 300 meters from the American perimeter at Bastogne, Belgium. The air was sharp with cold, the kind that turned breath into ghostly clouds drifting over the snow-covered ground. Kokott watched his men prepare for yet another assault, an assault that, in his mind, should have ended the battle 3 days earlier. He commanded the 26th Volksgrenadier Division, nearly 8,000 men hardened by the Eastern Front, supported by tanks, artillery, and the confident belief that Bastogne must fall quickly. German High Command insisted on it. The road junction at Bastogne was the beating heart of the Ardennes offensive, and Kokott was certain he possessed every advantage needed to crush the American forces inside. The defenders were paratroopers from the 101st Airborne Division, about 18,000 men at full strength, though real frontline numbers were lower. They had arrived in trucks only days earlier, rushed forward without proper winter clothing, without enough ammunition, and without tanks of their own. Many still wore thin summer uniforms in temperatures that froze exposed skin within minutes. They were trapped. No escape routes, no resupply lines, no way out. By every standard of military logic, the 101st should have broken within 48 hours. Inside the perimeter, conditions deteriorated from the first day. Food ran short almost immediately, and by December 21st the men were on half rations. Some units ate only one meal a day. Paratroopers scavenged whatever they could from abandoned Belgian homes, cans of food, bits of bread, the occasional chicken or pig left behind by fleeing civilians. Hunger gnawed constantly, and medical supplies were even scarcer. The division's main medical station had been captured on December 19th, and surgeons now worked out of basements and barns, improvising with what little they had. They reused bandages, operated without proper anesthesia, and watched men die from wounds that would have been survivable anywhere else. Ammunition was rationed just as severely. Machine gunners were told to fire only at confirmed targets. Riflemen were reminded that every bullet mattered. Artillery batteries were allotted only 10 shells per gun per day, barely enough to support defensive lines. Every shot had to count. Among those guns were the 155 mm howitzers of the 969th Field Artillery Battalion, an all-black unit attached to the 101st to provide heavy firepower the airborne troops lacked. Despite the brutal cold and ammunition shortages, the men of the 969th fired continuously, their accuracy earning respect throughout the division. But it was the cold that punished everyone most. Temperatures dropped well below freezing each night. Men wrapped newspapers under their uniforms and stuffed rags into their boots. Others wrapped their feet in burlap, hoping to prevent frostbite. Despite their efforts, toes, fingers, and feet were lost to the cold. Still, through hunger, lack of sleep, frostbite, and bombardment, morale refused to break. The paratroopers believed, truly believed, that help was coming. Patton's Third Army, they insisted, was already on the way. That belief, more than food, more than ammunition, gave them strength. By the third day, Kokott found himself puzzled. In Russia, encircled Soviet units either broke out immediately or collapsed within 48 hours. Soldiers deserted positions, officers lost control, and formations dissolved into chaos. But these Americans were different. Every assault Kokott launched should have shattered their line, yet each one failed. His men reported rifle fire that never slackened, machine gun nests that refused to go silent, foxholes that remained manned long after artillery barges should have emptied them. These paratroopers fought not like trapped men facing annihilation, but like soldiers confident they would win. On December 20th, Kokott launched his first major attack, a textbook operation with artillery preparation followed by a coordinated infantry advance. The bombardment devastated the tree line, ripping apart branches and sending dirt spraying across the snow. Kokott watched through binoculars as his troops closed the distance. Then, impossibly, American guns roared to life. Machine guns fired from multiple angles. Mortars struck accurately among his advancing troops. His battalions halted under brutal fire, pinned in open ground. Casualties mounted fast. By late afternoon, the attack was over. Kokott had lost 180 men in just a few hours. The American line held firm, untouched by the artillery meant to break it. By December 22, German High Command demanded Kokott issue a formal surrender ultimatum to the Americans. Surrounded forces always surrendered once they realized their situation was hopeless. Kokott agreed. Logic dictated the 101st Airborne should accept honorable terms to avoid annihilation. But the reply he received, one single word typed neatly onto a small sheet of paper, left him confused. Nuts. His English-speaking officer explained the meaning, and Kokott found himself staring at a refusal unlike anything he had witnessed in 5 years of war. Not a negotiation. Not a list of reasons. Not even a polite decline. It was defiance in its purest form, mocking, confident, dismissive. The Americans were surrounded, freezing, outnumbered 5-1, and they were laughing at the idea of surrender. Kokott finally understood what made these paratroopers so dangerous. Their advantage was not equipment or numbers. It was psychological. They believed relief was coming. They believed they would win. And soldiers who believe they will win fight with a calm, calculated ferocity that is impossible to break. The siege tightened. German assaults continued. But each day, American paratroopers held ground with a stubbornness that spread like wildfire through German ranks. Kokott's own men began whispering about the 101st Airborne. They claimed the Americans never abandoned their foxholes, even under direct artillery hits. They said wounded paratroopers continued firing. They spoke about night counterattacks, about positions retaken at dawn, about machine gunners who fought until the barrels of their weapons glowed red and jammed. Then, on December 23, the weather changed. Fog that had hung over Bastogne for days lifted like a curtain, revealing a clear, blue sky. Almost immediately, American aircraft appeared. C-47 transports dropping supplies, fighter bombers strafing German positions, artillery spotting planes guiding deadly accurate fire. Thousands of pounds of ammunition, medical supplies, and food drifted into Bastogne under parachutes. Suddenly, the besieged Americans were being sustained from the air, while Kokott struggled to move supplies under constant attack. By Christmas Eve, Kokott knew Patton's army was closing in. The Americans were less than 10 kilometers away, battering their way north through German defenses. If they reached Bastogne, Kokott's division would be trapped between enemy armor and enemy paratroopers. He requested permission to withdraw. The request was denied. Bastogne must be taken, Hitler insisted, no matter the cost. On Christmas morning, the last major German assault began. 18 Panzer IV tanks rolled forward in darkness, infantry clinging to their hulls. They advanced toward the northwest sector, hoping surprise would finally crack the American line. But the paratroopers were waiting. Artillery with proximity fuses rained steel onto the advancing troops, shredding infantry riding on the tanks. Anti-tank guns opened fire next, lighting the darkness with flashes that tore through German armor. A few Panzers broke into American positions, and brutal close-quarters fighting erupted. For a moment, chaos swept through the lines. But the paratroopers counterattacked with the same fearless aggression they had shown all week, bazooka teams sprinting between burning tanks, sergeants rallying scattered squads, riflemen firing from shattered windows. By dawn, all 18 German tanks lay destroyed or abandoned. The attack collapsed. The Germans withdrew, leaving the fields littered with debris and bodies. The Americans had not merely held, they had driven the enemy back. The next day, as sunlight faded on December 26th, the roar of engines echoed from the south. Then, emerging from the trees, came the first Sherman tank of the 4th Armored Division. Painted on the hull was the name, Cobra King. Lieutenant Charles Boggess leaned from the turret as cheering paratroopers swarmed the tank. The Siege of Bastogne was broken. That night, Kokott pulled his battered division back. He had lost too many men, too many tanks, too many days. The 101st Airborne, hungry, exhausted, frostbitten, had stopped a force that outnumbered them, surrounded them, and should have overwhelmed them. What Kokott did not understand until after the war was why the Americans fought the way they did. The answer lay in the nature of the airborne. Every soldier in the 101st had volunteered for one of the most punishing training programs in the U.S. military. They had run until their legs trembled, climbed until their arms burned, jumped from aircraft until fear disappeared. Only those with unbreakable determination remained. Their training forged a psychological bond that ordinary infantry could never match. They trusted one another completely, trust built from shared hardship long before they ever stepped onto a battlefield. They had jumped into Normandy under fire, fought through hedgerows and French towns, battled through Holland during Operation Market Garden, and survived situations nearly as desperate as Bastogne. When they were surrounded, they were not frightened. They had been tested before, and they believed they would endure again. That belief, that unbreakable cohesion, was the secret to their strength. After the war, Kokott described Bastogne as the moment he realized Germany would lose. Not because the Americans had more tanks or more artillery, but because they produced soldiers who refused to break. Soldiers who fought like victory was inevitable. Soldiers whose will proved stronger than any weapon on the battlefield. General Anthony McAuliffe, the man who sent the nuts response, later said leading the 101st was easy because they required no detailed orders. They knew their jobs, trusted their leaders, and believed in each other. His one-word reply traveled through the forests of Bastogne faster than any bullet. It became a rallying cry. Nuts, we're not quitting. The defenders suffered nearly 3,000 casualties during the siege. The Germans lost far more, as well as dozens of tanks and irreplaceable time. That time allowed the Allies to regroup, counterattack, and halt the Ardennes offensive entirely. Bastogne helped break the last major German attack on the Western Front. It marked the moment the tide turned permanently and decisively. Today, Bastogne is a peaceful town. Tourists visit the museums. Farmers still find spent bullets in their fields. But the legacy of the siege lives on. Military academies around the world study it as proof that morale, cohesion, and belief can change the course of history. The Germans had numbers. They had tanks. They had momentum. But the Americans had something stronger, the absolute conviction that surrender was impossible and victory was certain. And in the frozen woods of Belgium, that conviction changed the world. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like the video. It helps keep these powerful and often overlooked stories alive. Subscribe if you'd like to join us for more untold histories from the Second World War. And let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Our community spans continents, from veterans to lifelong history lovers, and your voice adds to this shared journey of remembering the past. Thank you for watching, and thank you for helping keep the story of Bastogne alive.